Hey guys, Victor here coming to you with another deck profile, and for today's video we're going to be doing an update on the Lightsworn Tearlaments deck. Now before we actually get into the profile itself, I'm just going to say right now, this is not 60 cards, which means we're not playing Grasslick Screener, and that's just because I just don't really enjoy Grass and Tearlaments decks. If you want like a more in-depth reasoning as to why, feel free to check out my previous Tearlaments vid where I actually talk about why I don't really think Grass is all that great or needed in Tearlaments itself. Now, if this was a pure Lightsworn deck, that would be a different story, and I would be definitely showcasing a 60-card monstrosity that would be a lot of fun to pilot. But as long as Tearlaments are involved, I definitely feel like 40 is pretty much just always going to be the way to go because it's the most consistent, and just a bunch of other stuff. Like I said, it's discussed in the other videos, so if you want, check it out. And if not, well, let's just get into it. Now, as always, we're going to be starting off with the monster lineup first, and we're going to be focusing on the Tearlaments portion before we get to the other stuff. So, as a result, we're going to be playing 3 Tearlaments Kashtira. Just a really phenomenal card at helping you mill, as on normal or special summon, it's able to mill 3 cards, and then when it's into the graveyard, you're able to mill 2 more cards. So, it just really complements your Tearlaments and your Lightsworn portion of the deck very well. Then to accompany our 3 tier caches, we're going to be playing 2 Tearlaments Reinohearts. So when it comes to pure Tearlaments, I'm definitely an advocate of playing 3 Reinohearts, but because this is a hybrid variant, I don't really feel like you need the 3, as it's not really supposed to be like the main focus of the deck. As while a starting hand of like Reinoheart plus Scream is still very phenomenal, it's not the be-all end-all, and there are a lot of times where you just don't even want to summon the Reinoheart, for example. So just 2 is perfectly fine. Like if you have it, great. If you don't, whatever, it's fine, because you're probably going to get access to it at some point. And we have like a lot of really cool ways to be able to just search it out and just mill it in general. So like I said, you can play 3, but it's not really like the main focus of the deck. Then for the 1 of Tearlaments, you have the 1 Scheiren, the 1 Havnis, and the 1 Merrli. They all mill 3 if you meet their conditions, and then they're all the ones responsible for helping you fusion summon. So yeah, gotta play them. Then that's it for the Tearlaments portion. For the Lightsworn stuff, we're still going to be rocking triple Weiss, Lightsworn Archfiend. So prior to the Fiendsmith stuff being released, this card was okay. Like obviously it's really good, right? Because it stacks one of your bricks on top of your deck and you're able to mill it, usually like a Wulf or a Felis or whatever, and then full combo your opponent. But it's only gotten more impressive with the release of the Fiendsmith engine, just because if you're able to just open this card with like nothing else, that's still quite literally full combo. As you just normal summon your Weiss, you link it off into Fiendsmith Requiem, because this does happen to be a light fiend monster. Requiem will get you your Engraver, and then from there you can either make like depending on what your hand looks like, you can go for either like your Kelbic or Agido at home being Pilgrim Reaper, or you can go for Wave High King Caesar to be able to negate cards like Nibiru and Bestials. But yeah, this card is just phenomenal. So even if you draw it, it's not the end of the world. And if you have it paired with like one of your other Lightsworn cards, it just only gets better. So yeah, definitely got to play 3 of that. And to accompany our 3 Weisses, we're going to be playing 3 Wulf, Lightsworn Beast. What can I say? It's Wulf. If you draw it, hopefully you have a Weiss to pair with it. Otherwise, it's just going to be glued to your hand with pretty much no way to get rid of it. But if it's in your deck, you're going to mill it at some point, and they're just really nice extenders to have. Next up, we're going to be playing 1 Dragonling. So this is actually one of the biggest changes that I've made to the previous deck profile. As I used to be playing 3 Dragonling, but the more that I've played this deck, the more that I've tended to realize that we don't really use this all that much, right? It's a nice extender to have, but the deck doesn't really revolve around it, and then we don't even play cards like Judgment Dragon or Punishment Dragon, so its graveyard effect is basically worthless. This is basically just one of those things that if you have it, great. If not, you could just get it off like one of your 3 charges of Light Brigades and just continue to combo off if your opponent decides to hand trap you at any point. But much like Reinoheart, the deck does not revolve around Lightsworn Dragonling like a pure Lightsworn deck would. So while it's still a very strong card, I don't really feel like you need more than one of it to accomplish what you need in this deck. And then for the final Lightsworn monster, just the 1 Felis, Lightsworn Archer. Much like Wulf, it special summons itself when milled to the graveyard, but it's only when it's milled by a monster effect. So if you mill it with like a Scream, for example, or your Touch of the Light Brigade, you're just out of luck because it will not activate. But, still really nice. Even if you don't like mill it with a monster effect, as long as you can send Weiss to the graveyard from your deck somehow and bring it back, you can still just combo off. So yeah, you gotta play it. And that's it for the Lightsworn portion. And then I've mentioned the Fiendsmith because of Weiss, so we're of course going to be playing 3 Fiendsmith Engravers. Card's broken for a reason, right? You just activate it, add tract, it's full combo every single time. And then even just like outside of that, right? It's a level 6 body that constantly brings itself back once per turn, so it's able to recycle your resources. It can threaten your opponent. If you happen to have Requiem in your graveyard, you can equip it, and then it for some reason just gets rid of another opponent's monsters while sending your Requiem to the graveyard. Like, this card is just phenomenal at what it does. Then you have the one Fabled Lurrie. Truth be told, you don't really need this one just because, say for example, you go Fiendsmith Engraver, adding Tract, activate Tract. You don't have to add Lurrie or another Engraver. You could also just add your Weiss, right? So it's not like the be-all end-all on needing to rely to this card to be able to just access your Fiendsmith engine. But it's still nice to have because there are certain situations that do come up where you wish you would have the Lurrie. So that's why we include that. And that's it for the Fiendsmith engine, but we do play a couple other monster cards. So we're still playing 2 Beastking of the Swamps. You know, it's a level 4 monster, so that's a water, which means that it's allowing you to make Bahamut Shark a lot more easily as opposed to just having to rely entirely on something like Reinoheart to do it. And then it's really good when you're able to mill this card off like a zombie vampire, right? So you mill it, you special summon off zombie vampire, and then you just have to rely on things like Reinoheart even less. But, you know, it's just a really solid card that also allows us to get into Tearlaments Rokolos, which is going to be a lot more important because, as I mentioned earlier, the loss of Appaloosa does matter a lot. So we're pretty much going to have to like load up on things like Rokolos or Toadally Awesome to be able to handle our opponent's fields and potentially not get blown out. But yeah, 2 Beastking of the Swamps, and then for the final monster, just the one Mudora, the Sword Oracle. It's great if you go first. It's horrible if you go second, which is why we only play the one. The reason why you play it over Keldo, it has 300 more attack points. That's it. And with that, that's the monster lineup, and now we can finally move on to the spell and trap portion. Now, as far as the spell and traps are concerned, the lineup honestly hasn't really changed all that much compared to the previous profile, but even so, we're still going to be playing 3 Primeval Planet Perlereino. You activate it, you add any tier monster on your deck to your hand, it boosts all your tiers and fusions by 500, and when a tier monster gets shuffled back, you get to destroy a card on the field. It's just a really phenomenal field spell that really does do everything for this deck. Then, for the other 3 ofs, we're still playing 3 Charge of the Light Brigade. It's phenomenal as long as you don't mill a tier card, because it sends for cost, which means if you hit a tier monster or a spell or trap, it's not going to trigger their effects. So just be aware, and it also won't trigger your Felis, unfortunately, but just having another card that says mill 3, add anything, does go a long way in just helping you pretty much out-tempo your opponent to win the game as easily as possible. And then for the final 3 of, we're still going to be playing 3 Triple Tactics Talent. It doesn't matter if you play 3 Talent, it doesn't matter if you play 3 Dark Ruler No More, it doesn't matter if you play 3 Forbidden Droplet. You pretty much just play whichever one matches your needs the most, and where I'm from, there's a lot of hand traps. So something like Talents is going to be definitely greatly appreciated as opposed to the other 2, but they're always in the back of my mind, right? So yeah, just play whichever one is more accustomed to like your local area, I guess. That's it for the 3 ofs though, and then for the 2 ofs, you just play 1 card being Tearlaments Scream. Much like Reinoheart, since the deck isn't entirely focused on the Tearlament portion, you can get away with just playing 2. It's literally not the end of the world because you're even without this card, you're still milling like 3/4 to your entire deck if you really wanted to. So, you know, it's nice to have, but it's not the be-all end-all, and it's not the end of the world if you don't open up with it. But yeah, it's still a really solid card as it mills 3 during your turn and your opponent's turn, as long as you have a face-up tier monster and someone decides to summon a monster. The 500 attack point drop for your opponent's monsters is honestly pretty huge at helping you ensure that you can survive your opponent's like attempt to crack your board. And then when it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, it's able to search for any tier trap. And that's it for the 2 ofs. And then for the 1 ofs, you got to play the 1 of Fiendsmith Tract. This is pretty much going to be your only target off of Engraver because we don't play Sanct. You play 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Tearlaments Grief, and the 1 Call by the Grave. So with that, that's the spell lineup. And then we have a couple of traps as well, but you guys have seen them a million times, being the 2 Tearlaments sulliek. It negates monster effects. When it's sent to graveyard, it adds any tier monster. Really straightforward. We don't play Trivicorn just because we already have enough bricks. And plus, because we do play the Synchro engine in the form of like Visa's Amritara, we don't really need to rely on Trivicorn to be able to add cards like the Field Spell or sulliek or Scream or anything like that. So, you know, it's perfectly fine. 40 cards, like I said at the beginning of the video, just because I don't really think Grass belongs in a deck like this. But hey, you know, teach their own. If you want to play Grass, go for it. If not, maybe think about modeling your deck after mine. But yeah, with that, that's the main deck, and then we can finally move on to the extra deck. Now, when it comes to the extra deck, I'm not going to lie to you guys, even though we did free up a couple of slots with the loss of Lacrima and Appaloosa and Beatrice, it honestly was even tougher to decide which 15 cards I wanted to choose to play, just because it kind of opened the floodgates, and there's a lot of really good cards that just did not make the cut, unfortunately. Even so, I'm pretty happy with the 15 that I selected, but that doesn't mean that it's like the be all end all, right? If you don't agree with anything, by all means, feel free to like change it and make it more fit to your playstyle. But even so, like I said, I'm pretty happy. So as a result, we're playing the synchro monsters being the one Minerva. For every Lightsworn material used to summon it, you get to mill 2 Lightsworns from your deck to the graveyard. So that pretty much allows you to make like another instant level 8 synchro, as you're typically going to be sending like a Weiss plus a Wulf or a Felis and then grabbing back one of the previous cards used to make Minerva in order to make your next level 8 synchro, which is of course going to be the Visas Amritara, who on summon is able to search out for quite literally every single one of your Tearlament spells. So it can add your planet, it can add your sulliek, and it can add your scream, or it can add your Tearlaments Grief. It can literally add every single one of those because they all happen to mention Visa Starfrost in the text. As for the popping effect, it literally does not matter, just because the moment this card resolves, it's going to immediately help us go into this card, which is the Zombie Vampire. So it takes 2+ level 8 monsters, and the Minerva by itself is basically not a 1 card, but it automatically helps you get into the Visas, which in turn gives you access to the Zombie Vampire immediately. And the Zombie Vampire, you detach 1, you mill 4 cards from both players' decks, and then you get to special summon 1 monster. So this card has the potential to just completely spiral the game out of control, right? Even if your mills are bad, right? Say, for example, you're playing against someone that has Fenrir in their main deck, you can special summon their Fenrir, who's already an imposing body on his own, and then you get the added benefit of being able to activate the Fenrir to add your tier caches to hand and just completely out-tempo your opponent. So yeah, this card, it gets really crazy really fast, and these are typically just like 1-2 card combos that completely just allow you to out-tempo your opponent. So yeah, really cool stuff. Then for the others, we're still playing the Bahamut Shark with the Totally Awesome package. So like I said, we did lose Appaloosa. So just having something like Totally Awesome to help us protect ourselves from cards like Nibiru, or just really good power spells such as like Raigeki, which a lot of people are playing, or Dark Hole, Lightning Storm, things of that nature, is just invaluable. And then on top of that, we get to take that card if we're able to destroy it with its negation effect. And as if that wasn't good enough, when Totally Awesome is sent to the graveyard, it basically reads, add any water monster from your graveyard to your hand. So you can add back your Reinohearts, you can add back your tier caches, you can add back your Totally Awesome itself if you still have Bahamut Shark on the field. Yeah, as long as it's a water monster, you can put it back. And then for the other exceeds, we play the 2 rank 6s, being the 1 Pilgrim Reaper, who's literally Kelbeck and Agito at home. And then for the other one, we have DDD Wave High King Caesar. So the idea behind Caesar is that you basically make this card through your Fiendsmith engine, obviously. And it's just there to help you protect yourself from cards like Nibiru a lot more effectively, as through the entire, like in general, the Fiendsmith engine combo is going to take 5 summons every single time, right? So when you're deciding on what rank 6 to make between Pilgrim Reaper and DDD Wave High King Caesar, you're basically just doing it like this. So if your hand is filled with nothing but gas, you go for the Caesar to ensure you have protection, right? But if you're desperate for mills, you go for the Pilgrim Reaper. That's typically how I decide, right? So like if your hand is weak, go for Reaper. If your hand is strong, go for Caesar. But yeah, they're both really good at what they do, and they're both incredibly easy to make. And that's it for the Exceed monsters. Then for the Link monsters, this is probably the most controversial part yet. But when it comes to the Fiendsmith stuff, we're only playing 2 cards. So we're playing the 1 Moon of the Closed Heaven because it just takes any 2 monsters, and then we're playing the 1 Requiem. We're not going to be playing Sequence in this deck just because while Desiree is a really cool card, and it's pretty easy to make just because we happen to mill basically our entire deck, and then we have additional monsters in the form of Weiss, right, that we can use as material to summon it. I don't really know if we have the space for it, just because it's either we go for the Sequence Desiree play or we go for the Bahamut Toad play. That's basically just how I've rationalized it. And for me personally, the Bahamut Toad play is a lot more stronger, I guess, and more difficult for your opponent to deal with, just because it's a general omni-negate, as opposed to while Desiree is a really strong card, especially when you pair it with like Tearlaments sulliek, right? As it allows you to beat cards like Dark Ruler and more, and Forbidden Droplet and things like that. Totally Awesome just allows you to protect yourself from a lot more varied cards. So yeah, I definitely go with either one or the other, but not both. And like I said, I just chose Bahamut Toad just because I feel like it's a lot more powerful and annoying to deal with. Then for the final Link monster, just the 1 SP Little Knight because it's broken. And then for the fusion monsters, you play the 1 Mudragon, the 1 dragostapelia, the 1 Necroquip Princess, which is basically what allows you to easily make your rank 6 plays, your Tearlaments Reinoheart, and your Tearlaments Kaleido-heart. And with that, that's the deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!